two retired guys being in the Hall of Fame could mean money to them. Now they can go to signing so-and-so Hall of Famer. I get that, bro. I get if guys are retired and if they can get that Hall of Fame label, they could take advantage of that from a monetary point of view. Obviously,
you get a check too for being
probably. Obviously, Chris Jericho doesn't need that money.
All right, so let's talk about Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho does not want to go into the Hall of Fame. He told the Toronto Sun, he said, "I'm not one of those guys who cares about the Hall of Fame because I don't think it's really real anyway. In some ways, it's like, whatever. In other ways, I want to pull a Sex Pistols and just refuse to show up. Send a letter saying, do not mention my name, like Axl Rose did. What a great wrestling thing to do. It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. It's great that guys go in there, and I'm glad they get a chance to, but I'm already a Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is up here," points to head. "It's more for the fans."
You think you know all the wrestling stories? There's more you haven't heard yet. Join us on Backstage Pass.
So as someone who was a WWE loyalist from how long? He debuted in August of 99.
Something like that.
And stayed until around like 16, 17. So he was a loyalist for 17 so years, man, for 16, 17 years. And so before he went to Japan, and for a long time, he was like, no, I'm strictly WWE. I'm not going to have any appearances. And then the surprise came when he did the New Japan show and did a couple of those, and he came to AEW. But for someone who was a loyalist to Vince McMahon for so long, does it surprise you that Chris Jericho doesn't care about being in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, bro, because the Chris Jericho that I worked with did not have an ego. So that does not surprise me at all. Bro, listen, man, guys with egos, the Hall of Fame is going to mean a lot to them. Bro, I remember Flair showing everybody his Hall of Fame rings at TNA, like, whoopee, But I do want to say this, bro. Two retired guys being in the Hall of Fame could mean money to them. Now they can go to signing so-and-so Hall of Famer. I get that, bro. I get if guys are retired and if they can get that Hall of Fame label, they could take advantage of that from a monetary point of view. Obviously,
you get a check too for being
probably. Obviously, Chris Jericho doesn't need that money, so he's just calling it what it is. And like I said, man, I never knew Chris to have an ego. I mean, things like that just weren't important to him.
Really interesting. I think it's a very interesting thing that Jericho, for someone who was there for so long, just legit just doesn't care. What do you think the payoff to a career in pro wrestling is? And I guess that ties into another question I have along the same lines. It's what's ultimately the payoff for a wrestling career, period? Because it feels like closure. Like, say for instance, football or baseball, there's a criteria. You have to be gone for a certain amount of time, and then you become eligible to become legitimately voted by a committee into the Hall of Fame. So, and it's a sign of closure. It's kind of like a bow to a storied career. But when it comes to wrestling, that doesn't really occur. Like, it's not really it's a storied career, but the career, it drags on so long, and then people still stay and still stay and then still stay. What's the payoff to a long storied wrestling career?
Bro, to me, Chris, a payoff would be two things. Number one, I still have my health. I didn't get effed up beyond repair being a professional wrestler. That would be number one. Number two, I took care of my money. And now, I had a financial advisor, made investments, whatever the case may be. And now I can retire know I have enough money to live the rest of my life. To me, that's the payoff. If you are a professional wrestler and you can walk away with those two things, number one, being healthy, and number two, being able to retire and not have to worry about finances, to me, I don't know what else you could want. But again, you and I talk about this. You're the psychologist. You talk about this all the time, Chris. The limelight, the admiration, they miss all of that stuff, which is just ego-driven and really not important. The most important thing is, are you healthy? The second most important thing is, can you retire and live out the rest of your life and have enough income? To me, that's a win.
You think, but that doesn't really exist in the world of professional wrestling. I mean, like I said, with basketball and baseball, you play a career, you leave a legacy, you're in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you strive to be the best of the best. Just because that really mints your name into just the annals of history. It goes way beyond your life at that time. Like basketball players, you have legendary Oscar Robertson, for instance. Like you have legend Pistol Pete Maravich. You have legendary names that is just among the greatest of all time, Hall of Fame, names when it comes to baseball, living way beyond your legacy. Someone like a Muhammad Ali, when it comes to boxing, like a Joe Frazier when it comes to boxing. And so you're doing all this, you're leaving a legacy, you're minting your name etched in history. When it comes to someone who's a pro wrestler, do you think they overstay their welcome to not even give themselves an opportunity to do that?
Absolutely. But bro, I'll tell you who I think did it perfectly. I'll tell you, I think did it absolutely. Well, a couple of people did, but the one person that really comes to my mind is Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash did it perfectly. He didn't kill himself in the ring. He wrestled safe. He's healthy today. You know how Kevin Nash was with money. It was all about money. He made a lot of money. He saved his money. Now Kevin Nash is in a situation. If there's a convention local and they want to pay me $25,000 for the day, maybe I'll go do that. I mean, I think Kevin Nash, I think, is a perfect example because now he's healthy. He's got money. And if he wants to do it, he can do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't have to do it. And how did Kevin get there, bro? He got there by this. That's how Kevin got there. Yeah. So I think that is a guy that did it perfectly.
That's a good example because we're not going to see Kevin Nash hop in a ring anymore. No, you know what I mean? No. He doesn't need to. Yeah, he doesn't need to. That's like saying, when you don't overstay your welcome, it gets to the point of like you did it right. We don't want to see you back because we don't want any of that legacy to be tarnished in any way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Glenn, I have this argument with Glenn all the time. Disco. He thinks a legacy in wrestling is ridiculous. And you if you can make money and keep going back and back and back and back, you should. And I disagree with him, man. I think you build a legacy through years and years and years and years of, injuries and sacrifices and then to, in your 60s to be tarnishing that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't.
Yeah. I can't speak from a perspective of being a professional wrestler, but I definitely can speak from a perspective of being a doctor of psychology. I wouldn't think that that's the best idea because you leave your legacy based on how the fans view you. I mean, you're a legend based on what you built and what the fans have viewed you as. Like, for instance, a lot of people have criticized someone like Undertaker. I don't think his legacy's been tarnished, but at the same time, there is a lot of people who are like, he did stay a little bit too long after certain WrestleManias. And so it's like, but he hopped out enough he hopped out enough to say, okay, I'm not going to just absolutely tarnish it, right? But the problem is someone like a Bill Goldberg who's coming back, this year. It's like, I mean, personally, I'm a huge Goldberg fan, but Goldberg has been tarnished by coming back and losing. You know what I mean? So,
bro, you know what it is, Chris, and you'll appreciate this because you got freaking patients coming in your door all day long. Chris, they all have different reasons for it. Like
sure.
when you bring up the Undertaker, this is another guy I know he does not have an ego. He doesn't. He never had an ego. It's not about, I think with Taker, I really think what happens with Taker is he misses it. I don't think he needs the admiration from the fans. He certainly doesn't need the money. I think Taker just winds up missing it. Take a guy like Goldberg. Bro, I think in Goldberg's mind, he still has something to prove because his WWE legacy was not very good. So like, in Goldberg's mind, it's trying to repair that and trying to fix that. Flair is a egomaniac. That's why he does it. So like everybody's got their reasons and their difference. I look at a guy like Jeff Jarrett and bro, like I could tell you, man, if Jeff thinks he can still go, Jeff's going to make money. That's how Jeff is. Jeff is more about business and making money than an ego. And if he thinks he can go, he's going to go and he's going to make money. He's going to constantly make money. So they all have different reasons for it, Yeah.
It's I think about when I think of also like creating a legacy, I think of like a comic book, like an X-Men, I mean? Like there's certain people like a Professor X. Like he's an older person, but he still has use. There's still a role for him, on the team. You know what I mean? Someone who's like a Gambit would overstay his welcome if he becomes old, because the Gambit that we know is like spry and young and good looking, and what I mean, like that's the type. Wolverine's an older guy, you know what I mean, like and so like he can keep. There's certain people who just really are like evergreen stars, and they can come back and still have that type of ability. But there's some people who are like supernovas, you know what I mean? Like the people who are like on the top, they're like supernovas. You don't want the star, like with supernovas, it burns out. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think a lot of times when the stars are really bright, it's like supernova-ish. And like those supernovas, the really brightest stars, they go out, they burn out, and then they come back and people are like, like I don't you've already burned out, you know what I mean? But there's some stars that aren't necessarily supernovas. You know what I mean? They can last for long. They're not getting really bright and become the brightest of the bunch, and they have more ability to stay longer. Does that make sense? Like And so I think with like a Taker, it's like the timing is like, okay, so I'm starting to burn out a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna back out now. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a big difference between when it comes to Hall of Fame and building legacies and things like that. When it comes to wrestling, at least, and you have to be mindful of where you are in your legacy, because the old adage is, you either die a hero or live long enough to be a villain. And a lot of times, when it comes to like the current Goldbergs, the current Hogans, it's like living long enough to be the villain stage in their in their stage of their careers. Thankfully, Taker didn't, his character was so magnetic that he really didn't need to, he was kind of an anti-hero anyways, you know what I mean? So it worked for him. But like a Hogan and a Goldberg, in many people's eyes, not mine, but many people's eyes, those two people are still are living long enough to be the villain, unfortunately.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. I mean, I keep telling like Hulk, like, bro, just bow out for a little while, man. Even if it's just a little while, like you know it, you
Yeah.
can feel it, bro. It's
You
just bow out for a little while. I
Yeah.
swear, Chris, I wish I could do that. I wish, bro, like I could just like disappear for a year, because I know if I came back in a year, I'd probably make a heck of a lot more money. I can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
These guys can, they can afford to do whatever they want to do. And that's why if I were him, with where he is right now, man, I would lay so low for a couple of years and then just make one final comeback, and that's it,
Yeah. Yep. Indeed, we shall see. But this is the last year for Goldberg, seemingly, and I don't think that this is the last year for Hogan. Though. I think we'll see more Hogan down the pike, and Real American Beer will continue to sponsor Netflix, and as long as he gets that ability to have that limelight, you're going to see Hulk Hogan on Netflix.
I agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, this guy right here is Vince Russo. I am Dr. Chris. This is a Writing with Russo. Have a good night, everybody. Solo.